Right now, the United States has military forces, intelligent assets, or strategic pressure operating across at least five major global theaters: Iran, Russia and Ukraine, Israel and the wider Middle East, cartel wars in Latin America, and rising tensions with China and North Korea. Each one of these conflicts has the potential to expand. Each one involves nuclear-armed countries or major global powers, and the uncomfortable question more Americans are starting to ask is this: how many global crises can the United States manage at the same time before something breaks? Welcome back to Behind the Line podcast, where we take a deeper look at the national security, political, and global issues shaping the world Americans live in. Tonight we're zooming out and looking at the entire global picture, because over the past week alone, the United States has conducted military operations in South America, hosted a regional security summit with Latin American leaders, continued military operations against Iran, maintained support for Ukraine's war against Russia, managed growing economic and strategic competition with China, and monitored instability from North Korea. That's a lot happening at once. So tonight we're asking a serious strategic question: is the United States becoming dangerously overstretched? Iran and the Middle East conflict. The most immediate military conflict right now involves Iran. Recent reporting indicates the United States carried out major strikes against Iranian naval assets during the current escalation. At one point during the fighting, the administration claimed dozens of Iranian vessels were destroyed during several days of operations. This conflict matters far beyond the Middle East. Iran is closely connected with a network of global actors, including Russia, China, and Hezbollah, and multiple proxy militias across the region. China has already warned that the war risks destabilizing the global system, saying the conflict should never have happened and could escalate further. So even though the fighting is happening in the Middle East, the geopolitical consequences stretch much farther. And that brings us to the next flashpoint: Israel and the risk of a wider regional war. Another layer of complexity involves Israel and the broader regional balance of power. While Iran remains Israel's primary adversary, Israel leadership has recently begun raising concerns about Turkey emerging as a strategic rival in the region. Reports indicate Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has been working to develop new alliance structures across the Mediterranean and Asia. Those potential partnerships include countries such as Greece, Cyprus, India, and various regional partners. The goal is to create a strategic network that can counter rising Turkish influence in the eastern Mediterranean. Relations between Israel and Turkey have deteriorated significantly in recent years. Turkey has openly supported Hamas politically and diplomatically, something Israel views as a direct threat to its security. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has also strongly condemned Israeli military operations and repeatedly accused Israel of committing war crimes. At the same time, Israel has been strengthening security cooperation with Greece and Cyprus. These partnerships are partly designed to counter Turkey's growing military and energy ambitions in the eastern Mediterranean. Now here's where things get complicated for the United States. Turkey is a NATO member. Israel is one of America's closest strategic allies in the Middle East. If tensions between those two countries ever escalated into direct military confrontation, the United States could find itself stuck between two critical partners. And there are already signs of how easily regional fighting could spread. Recently, an Iranian missile that entered Turkish airspace had to be intercepted by NATO defense systems. That incident highlights how quickly the situation could expand beyond a localized conflict. If the Israel-Iran conflict grows, if Hezbollah opens a northern front from Lebanon, or if Turkey becomes directly involved, the Middle East could quickly turn into a multi-nation regional war. And that would almost certainly pull the United States deeper into the conflict. The Ukraine War. While tensions rise in the Middle East, the United States remains heavily invested in the war between Russia and Ukraine. American support for Ukraine includes military equipment, intelligence support, financial aid, and coordination with NATO allies. The conflict has now lasted multiple years and continues to consume enormous amounts of military resources and political attention. Even though American troops are not directly fighting Russia, the United States remains deeply involved in the strategic outcome of the war. That means another major global theater requiring constant attention. Pakistan and Afghanistan, another war igniting. While the world's attention has been focused on the Middle East and Ukraine, another conflict has quietly erupted in South Asia. Pakistan and Afghanistan are now engaged in what officials have described as open war, following a series of cross-border strikes and retaliatory attacks. The current escalation began after Pakistan launched airstrikes inside Afghanistan targeting camps belonging to the Pakistani Taliban and ISIS-K militants operating near the border. Afghanistan's Taliban government condemned those strikes, claiming civilian areas were hit, and accused Pakistan of violating Afghanistan's sovereign borders. Within days, Afghan forces launched retaliatory attacks across the border. Since then, both sides have exchanged artillery fire, drone strikes, and ground assaults along the Durand Line border region. Each side is claiming significant casualties, with reports of dozens of soldiers killed on both sides in some of the heaviest fighting between the two countries in years. The violence has already displaced tens of thousands of civilians and raised alarms among international observers that the conflict could spiral further. Why does this matter for the bigger global picture? Because Pakistan is a nuclear-armed country, and Afghanistan remains home to several militant organizations, including ISIS-K and remnants of al-Qaeda. If this conflict expands, it adds yet another unstable region to an already tense global environment. The cartel warfare in Latin America. Closer to home, the United States has also begun expanding military and security operations against cartel networks in Latin America. Recent reports indicate U.S. forces conducted targeted strikes against narco-terrorist networks in Ecuador in coordination with local authorities. These operations are part of a broader campaign to dismantle major drug trafficking networks across the Western Hemisphere. The effort includes U.S. Southern Command operations, joint missions with regional militaries, and targeting cartel infrastructure connected to international drug trafficking routes. This campaign has already included air and maritime operations against cartel vessels operating throughout the Caribbean and Pacific. In other words, the United States is now running what amounts to a militarized anti-cartel campaign across parts of Latin America. Mexico, the cartel power vacuum after El Mencho. Closer to home, another development is unfolding in Mexico that could have major implications for regional security. In February, Mexican special forces killed Nemesio Seguera Cervantes, better known as El Mencho, the leader of the Jalisco New Generation cartel. El Mencho was one of the most powerful drug traffickers in the world and the head of one of the most violent cartels operating in North America. The operation that killed him triggered immediate chaos. Cartel members responded by burning vehicles, blocking highways, and launching attacks across multiple Mexican states. Security analysts say the killing may actually create a dangerous power vacuum inside the cartel. With El Mencho gone and his son already imprisoned in the United States, there is no clear successor to control the organization. When that happens in cartel, it isn't peace. It's a violent struggle for control. Some reports say the retaliation and internal power struggle have already triggered waves of violence across parts of Mexico, killing dozens and destabilizing several regions. And because these cartels operate directly along the U.S. border and control major drug trafficking routes into the United States, instability in Mexico quickly becomes an American security issue as well. The Shield of the Americas Summit. At the same time these operations were unfolding, the United States hosted a major regional security summit known as the Shield of the Americas. The summit brought together numerous Latin American leaders to discuss coordinated responses to organized crime and regional security threats. Topics included cartel violence, migration pressures, economic stability, and growing Chinese influence in the region. That last point is critical. China's economic footprint in Latin America has grown dramatically. Trade between China and Latin America now exceeds $500 billion, and Beijing has loaned over $120 billion to governments across the region. From Washington's perspective, Latin America is becoming another major arena in the broader geopolitical competition with China. The China factor. Even while managing multiple conflicts elsewhere, the United States is also dealing with a long-term strategic rivalry with China. Tensions between the two countries include trade tariffs, technology competition, disputes over Taiwan, and military positioning across the Pacific. Despite these tensions, diplomatic engagement continues, and there are expectations that the two leaders may meet for talks later this year. But China is closely watching every conflict involving the United States, because each new crisis stretches American military resources and strategic focus. North Korea. Another potential flashpoint remains North Korea. The country continues developing missile technology and maintains strategic ties with both Russia and Iran. If tensions escalate in the Middle East or the Pacific, North Korea could easily become another destabilizing factor. This is how global conflicts begin to overlap. History shows that many large wars didn't start with one single confrontation. They started with multiple smaller crises happening simultaneously. The strategic question. Now take a step back and look at the map. Right now, the United States is managing major strategic involvements in the Middle East against Iran, a growing regional dynamic involving Israel and Turkey, support for Ukraine against Russia, anti-cartel operations in Latin America, strategic competition with China, and instability from North Korea. That's 6 major strategic pressure points. The United States has the most powerful military in the world, but even the strongest global power has limits. History shows that overextension is one of the biggest risks for superpowers. Rome faced it, Britain faced it, and eventually the Soviet Union faced it. So the real question moving forward isn't whether the United States can handle one crisis. It's whether we can manage all of them at the same time. Because when global tensions start stacking up like this, history has a tendency to move very quickly, and the world can change faster than anyone expects. That's something every American should be paying attention to. Because whether we like it or not, these decisions shape the future of the country we live in.
It's 11:59 at Radio Free America, and this is Uncle Sam with music and the truth until dawn. Right now, I got a few words for some of our brothers and sisters in the occupied zone. The chair is against the wall. The chair is against the wall. John has a long mustache. John has a long mustache. It's 12 o'clock, Americans, another day closer to victory. And for all of you out there on or behind the lines, this is your song.